AG Model 42, the automatic rifle that was only semi. The Swedish Army got interested in getting a semi-automatic rifle before and during World War II, which would be called an automatic rifle. In Sweden, an automatic rifle is a rifle that is not totally manually operated. A fully automatic weapon would be called a kulsprutegevär, or a gun that sprays bullet, if you translate it word by word. However, to make it easy, as the AGM Model 42 is a semi-automatic rifle, I will refer it as that. The army started by checking if any existing rifles could be modified, but that met with little success. A Finnish rifle was considered, but because of its design it was deemed too heavy. So what was needed was a domestically produced weapon, especially as World War II had now broken out and no gun had been bought yet. Several designs were included, but in the end the design by Erik Eklund, who worked for ABJC Ljungmans, won. What is interesting about Ljungmans is that it's not actually a weapons factory. They focus mainly on manufacturing petrol pumps and related articles. Late December 41 they held a discussion about the rifle that had been accepted, and by 1943 it was in production. They made 30,000 approximately in total, and all were produced at Carl Gustaf Stads Gevärsfaktori. It had a Swedish standard caliber 6.5 mm x 55 mm, a magazine holding 10 rounds that was loaded like the M1 Grand with stripper clips from above. The magazine can be removed, but mostly for cleaning. An interesting side note here is that at this time the Swedish Army had started moving away from round-nosed bullets to a pointy nose variant. But both ammunitions were used at this time, so the AGM-42 had a selector switch for both types. Max range for the rifle 500 to 800 meters. It weighed 4.7 kilos and the rate of fire was perhaps around 40 shots per minute. The first version had some problems, which is not surprising as it was a pretty rushed development. Among other things, the extractor failed. The grooves in the bolt to pull it back were too flimsy or too small for cold weather Sweden. You needed something bigger to be able to push it back when it's cold outside. And the gas tube that led the gases back after you fired the gun and reloaded the gun for the next shot was not rust-proofed, which meant if you stored it, it started rusting. Some of these issues would not be fixed until 1953 when the next model of the gun was overhauled. It saw service in the Swedish Army until the AK-4 was bought in sufficient numbers in the 60s. The AK-4 was using the NATO standard 7.62. The rifle had a pretty long lifespan, however it came a bit too late to be at the cutting edge, and it was never widely used as a weapon. Most soldiers still used the Mauser or the submachine gun M45 until the AK-4 started coming to service. Interestingly enough, the Egyptian army built their own version of this gun, producing some 70,000. Now you would have thought that this was the end for the gun in Swedish military service. But in the 60s, the Swedish army started to introduce something called the Pansarvärnsvagn 1110, which is a 90mm recoilless anti-tank gun. And for range finding they added the AG-M42 mechanism, calibrating it so it had the same ballistics as the actual anti-tank gun. So you fire the AG-M42 until you were on target and then you fire the anti-tank gun. So this is the short story about the Swedish automatic rifle that was only a semi. I hope you enjoyed.